All right, President Trump responding to the Prime Minister of Greenland's comments that residents of the Arctic island would choose to stay with Denmark. Meanwhile, the Senate today is scheduled to vote on a war powers resolution designed to limit President Trump's ability to continue strikes on Venezuela. Last week, 5 Republican senators bucked their party and voted with Democrats to advance the measure. Ever since, the White House has waged an intense pressure campaign on those lawmakers. Joining us now, ranking member of the Armed Services Committee, Democratic Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island. It's good to have you. Are there any more Republicans that you know of that might come on board here?
I don't know if there are any more, but certainly this was a significant vote last week. It's the first time, really, that Republicans have done, I think, what they would like to do privately, but were afraid to do publicly, and came out and voted for a constitutional congressional role in foreign policy. And I think that's a very positive step forward. I hope we can move forward today successfully and pass the measure.
So, Senator, let's go a little further on Venezuela, and we certainly a noteworthy vote here. But the president has also expressed an interest several times now to, quote, run Venezuela. Not much in the way of details provided to the general public. Has his administration conveyed to any of you in the Senate as to what exactly that means?
They have not provided any type of detailed plan. They've suggested that they're going to create a fund, and essentially we will be processing and selling the oil, put it in a fund, and give it back to the people of Venezuela. But it's just very unclear. I don't think themselves they know how they're going to run the country. Are they going to provide resources, humanitarian assistance? None of that has been made clear to the Congress, the Senate particularly, and I don't think they know either. It's kind of an ad hoc, day by day, let's get the oil and then worry about the rest of the stuff later.
Well, Senator, on that, let's turn to Greenland. The president on social media this morning once again reiterated his desire that the United States, one way or the other, control Greenland. We know there's a meeting scheduled with leaders shortly that will include the vice president. But at the heart of President Trump's argument for why the U.S. wants to have it, the point he made today anyway, is that he doesn't think Denmark can protect Greenland. Only the United States can do that from Russian or Chinese aggression. But Greenland is already part of NATO, so therefore NATO would leap to its defense if there was an attack. And that's why so many people are concerned if the U.S. were to try to take Greenland by force, that would trigger an Article 5 crisis.
All right. Well, you're exactly right, John. Article 5 says that if any member of NATO is attacked, then all members will come to their aid and assistance. And ironically, you have the United States, who really established NATO, now at least intimating that they're going to go after one of the NATO members. It's ridiculous. First of all, NATO, Denmark, the whole European Union, they will cooperate with the United States. They've shown that. And indeed, we have treaty rights in Greenland for stations. We used to have multiple military bases in Greenland, and I'm sure that the people of Denmark and Greenland would allow us to come back again. We have those rights. So this is just a preposterous scheme on the part of the president. It would destroy NATO, frankly, because the choice of uniting and attacking the United States or just leaving NATO, I think people would just leave NATO.
Senator, I just want to turn to domestic politics and events for a moment. Vice President J.D. Vance has suggested that ICE agents have absolute immunity as they terrorize Americans in our cities. I'm wondering if you think that there is any appetite among Senate Republicans, even a few of them, to start working with Democrats to push back and to offer some kind of oversight here.
There is, I think, growing concern on all of us. And by the way, the notion of absolute immunity is preposterous. Police officers have to follow the law themselves, and deadly force can be only used in very few matters. and every police officer's operations and actions are subject to judicial review. So this is just nonsense by the Vice President. I think my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, the Republicans, are beginning to sense that this is causing not just disruption in the United States, but we're moving to a country in which armed, masked enforcers are out on the street applying activities and doing things that are completely intolerable. The sense is there is some movement, but as of yet, I don't think we've seen a specific individual or several jump up and say they're going to stand tall against this. It's outrageous.
Democratic Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island, thank you very much for coming on the show
Thank you.
this morning.